How do you deal with trauma? How do you deal with past trauma, childhood traumas, adult traumas? And believe me, we're all traumatized to an extent, okay? All of us, that's like 100% of the population is traumatized one way or another. For some, it's some serious shit. For others, it's a little bit less severe, but it's still trauma. Most of our traumas happen as children, but as we grow up and become adults, we still experience trauma in adulthood. So if you've, let's say, served in the army, it's very common for people to have PTSD. You know, after serving in the army, they see their friends get killed. PTSD, by the way, is post-traumatic stress disorder, right? You see something, it fucks you up, and then it's just like you get shell-shocked. They would call it in World War I, right? And because of the artillery, they would call it shell-shocked, which is PTSD, really. Post-traumatic stress disorder. You just get traumatized, and you're just like, what the fuck did I see, right? So you still experience that as an adult. You might have even just gotten in a car accident, and that might have given you PTSD. So trauma. We're all traumatized to a certain extent, one way or another. Having been sexually abused as a child, which is a lot common than you think, is a form of deep trauma. Having been molested, having been physically abused by a parent or by a figure of authority, so much trauma, so much pain. You know, we live in a world where it's a sea of suffering, right? It's a sea of suffering. And I think just now with the ascension, with the planetary ascension, is that we're finally letting go of that dimension of suffering and pain, and we're moving into a higher dimension, a higher way of being. But in the meantime, we still have a lot of people that are traumatized, that have PTSD, and they don't even know it. And let's get into practical things, right? Like, what are some practical things you can do to get on with your life, to let that go in the past, right? Well, these traumas are stored in your body, in your emotional body. You see, you have your physical body, and it looks physical, right? It looks like, oh, you just have your body, and, you know, that's about it. But no, that's just the first layer, okay? There's like layers to your body. You have an emotional body. That emotional body is a deeper layer. In this, it resides within this physical body, right? I mean, you have energy centers like the chakras, right? 7 energy centers, 7 heavens, 7 hells. You can either be living in the 7 hells or the 7 heavens. And in the same way that trauma is energy, it's so much overwhelming negative energy, and that's why people have PTSD, they get post-traumatic stress disorder, but it gets stored in your emotional body. And it needs release. It needs to be released, plain and simple. We do not actually need to go back and spend years figuring out what went wrong. Although that can be helpful. It can be helpful, right? To know what went wrong and what happened. But it is not necessary. What is necessary is that these energies, these emotions, find a release. They find a physical release. They get released out of you. So there are a few techniques out there. There's a lot of techniques, right? I'll share with you guys some of the techniques that I've used. And I had been greatly traumatized as a child. I was severely physically abused, beaten the fuck out of is an understatement. So I had seen a lot of trauma as a child, right? I've experienced a lot of physical abuse and physical violence. So I've seen a lot of trauma in that sense. And I grew up in a pretty negative environment. So I've had all of these things. I've had all of these energies stored up in me, and that caused me to be an angry teenager, to be even an angry early 20s. I was very much an angry, frustrated person. And there was a period where all I listen to is Eminem, because Eminem is an angry guy with angry music, and God damn it, I love Eminem. I have such a sweet spot for him because he spoke to me at that stage in my life. He really spoke to me. But you know, that's in the past for me now. And the way I released all these traumas that I had, I'll share with you guys. Number one, catharsis. Catharsis. You want to go out somewhere safe, or if your house is safe enough for it, maybe your basement. Or I prefer to go to some really secluded, isolated area in the woods. And it's not that hard for me to find, because I usually like to fuck off and go somewhere really, really deep in the woods anyway, if I wanted to do catharsis or not. So I usually get myself in places in the woods where I could do catharsis if I want to, because I know not a single fucking human breath is around me here, because no one will fucking go there on Monday at 11 a.m., right? Everybody's at work. Plus, I'm deep into this place that like very few people know about. Get yourself somewhere safe, spacious, and with little to no human input or contact or presence. And then you want to start screaming like a Super Saiyan. Ah! You don't have to go like a Super Saiyan. You can just scream, you know, ah! Ah! Right? You just completely start bursting out. Summon the anger. It's much easier to summon anger than it is to summon tears, because the tears will follow after. But it's much easier to summon up anger. Anger is more of a superficial emotion, much easier to get in touch with. Maybe actually, now that I'm thinking, maybe it is easier for men, but maybe for women it might be more easy to summon up tears. In any case, whatever emotion you can summon up easily. If you're easily someone who cries by sadness, initiate a sad thought, maybe a sad thought about you getting beat up as a kid or molested, you know, sad, something that makes you really sad, and cry. But I think for a lot of people, for 60 to 80% of the people, it's easier to summon up the anger, the frustration, right? So you summon up the anger, you summon up the frustration, you scream, you just scream. I mean, it's really that easy. You just start screaming and you clench your fist and you clench your jaw, right? And you feel the anger. And then you really like think of some things that make you angry, right? Like, you know, a childhood memory, or you've seen your friend's brain get fucking splattered all over you and you while you're serving in the army, right? Something like that, something that makes you really fucking like I think for men in that case, it would be much easier for you to summon up anger over seeing your friend's brain splattered all over, right? I mean, you're very sad, you love your friend, you're probably gonna cry. But maybe it's easier to summon up that anger and you just feel it. Fuck, and you start screaming and yelling. Why? Use why. Why is very powerful. Why? You just ask yourself why. Why is usually the question that gets me to release the anger and gets me to release the tears and sadness. Like if I'm sad over something, over like say a breakup, or over you know, some kind of a childhood trauma, right? Like maybe getting beat up. Why did I have to go through this? Why did I have to be born in this place? Why? And you just kind of start why. See, like I could actually probably make myself cry right now, even though I'm kind of over that, but I think I have good acting abilities, right? I can actually make myself cry if I keep saying why, God, why? And you just ask yourself why. Or in an anger, you can be like, fuck, why? You know, ask yourself that question, why. It's very powerful. And that'll stir up a lot of anger, and that'll maybe even stir up sadness. We want to get to the release the anger, let it out, right? And then we want to get to the tears, because the sadness is usually the second layer beneath the anger, beneath the superficial emotion of anger. And I really think it's a great way to use the question why, and just say why about anything that is hurting you, any childhood trauma, emotion that's hurting you. And by virtue of saying why and really feeling the anger and the sadness and the tears, you will relive that moment. Naturally, you're going back, and you know, when you ask yourself, why did this happen to me? Why did I see my friend's brain? Why did my friend die? Why did I go to war? Why? You know, you're gonna relive all these moments. You're gonna relive the traumas, and you're gonna release them. You're gonna release them, right? Depending on how severe the trauma is. And so this is why I say you need to be in a space, in a safe environment, safe space. Because you're going to be releasing a lot of emotions here, and you're going to go crazy, you're going to go wild. It's going to be unpredictable. It's going to be a lot of energy that's going to leave you. And depending on the trauma, the severity of it, this can take many, many sessions. It might not be resolved in one session. This cathartic outburst, cathartic release. You know, if you're in that war situation that we're talking about, it's probably going to take you like a lot more than one session to get over that, right? I mean, there's one, anger with what happened, anger with the situation. There's a lot of sadness, a lot of tears for what happened, right? I mean, it's not just your friend. There's a lot of things involved here. You might have killed people. I mean, a lot of things could have happened. You might have seen more than one friend die in front of you. You might have seen some, horrific things. And so there's more trauma there. It's going to take more than one session, right? If you've been sexually abused or molested, it'll probably take more than one session too. That's something that goes deep. If you've been physically abused, same thing, That's one very powerful and useful tool. And it doesn't require much psychotherapy, because you're just reliving the trauma and releasing it, right? Because like I said, we can waste so much time just talking. We want to get to action. We want to release, like I do in these videos. I waste so much time talking, right? Like I made like a case for this before. But anyway, these topics are deep, so I like to introduce them and present them before providing practical solutions, right? So the second thing that really helped me, and again, these things, like, it took me many sessions of both of these techniques to really rid myself of the heaviness of these traumas that I had. The Wim Hof breathing technique / holotropic breathing, which is basically kind of like the breathing you do in a cold shower, right? Now you're gonna do this, right? If you do the Wim Hof breathing, look up Wim Hof breathing if you haven't, if you're not familiar with it. If you go deep enough into it, you do this with rounds, right? After your last breath, you hold on to the breath and you go again. If you go deep into it, 20 minutes plus, really focusing on the oxygenation and on the holding of the breath, you will begin to release all kinds of emotions. And I highly recommend you guys go watch Wim Hof's documentary with Vice. Just look up Wim Hof, the Iceman. You'll see the Vice documentary probably pop up the first thing. It's really what got him into it's getting him into mainstream, because Vice is pretty big, right? And they did a really good documentary on him. And you'll see he has the people that he trains with his breathing technique. You'll see them release all kinds of emotions. They're releasing trauma. So you'll see some people there, like as they're breathing and oxygenating themselves and really getting into this altered state of consciousness, you'll see them like, you'll see them do all kinds of weird things with their face, with their body, and and they're screaming, and it's just all this trauma leaving. The demons, it's exactly like they look like they're possessed by demons, because these are demons, right? And they're leaving. That when you go deep into this breathing, you just let them leave. You don't even know what's going on or what's happening. That's why I like my preferred method of releasing trauma, now that I've tried many things, is the Wim Hof breathing, because you do not need like Wim Hof says, psychotherapy, fuck off. You don't actually need psychotherapy. Because with the breathing, with the catharsis, you kind of know what's happening. You know, you're like, why? You're asking yourself and you're summoning up energy, which is, trust me, it's amazing, it's incredible. But you kind of know what's happening. With the Wim Hof breathing, you just have to keep breathing and emotions will just get released. You don't even know why. You don't need to know why. It's not that important, frankly, right? So if you go watch the documentary, you'll see people screaming and going really like, really doing weird. Their bodies moving in weird things and screaming, and some people are crying and some people are laughing hysterically. All kinds of emotions are being stirred up. And it's all the repressed emotions, the repressed traumas, the repressed tears, the repressed anger, the repressed joy, hence the laughter. You know, it's all these repressed things coming to the surface. Goes past the conditioning, as Wim Hof would say, right? We go past the conditioning. And if we go deep enough past the conditioning, we release all these subconsciously hidden emotional traumas. We just release them. And then once you release them, you know, that's it. You don't even need to know why, what happened, because now you're in the present moment. Now you finally get to experience the present moment. You're like, wow. Because all of that is gone now. And you don't even know, and you don't care. There's no need for knowing how. The important thing is that it got released. And the important thing is now you're present. And now you're present. So now you're here. And now you can begin to experience life. Right? Because if you're always living in trauma, first of all, your past traumas are recreating your present and your future. Second of all, you're always thinking about the past. It's getting you down. It's getting you depressed. You're not so much present in the moment, right? So these two techniques have been, you know, for me, I'm sharing, I know there's so many techniques out there. For me, these two techniques have been very much practical, down to earth, here you go, do it yourself, without so much talking and assessing what happened and all of that, which is, again, cool. I personally had to assess everything that happened. You know, I wish I had found out about the Wim Hof breathing and catharsis earlier, especially the Wim Hof breathing and how it can release the past childhood traumas and just traumas overall and PTSD and etc. I wish I had known about this before. I really wish I did, because it would have saved me like a lot of personal psychotherapy, let's say, going back and figuring out what happened and the reasons, etc, etc, etc. For me personally, it would have saved me a lot of that, but again, to each his own journey. So I still found it helpful to go back and do the psychotherapy analysis, do the talking, do the psychological parts of it. But really, catharsis, Wim Hof breathing, very practical, because it's right there, it's happening in your body, in the present moment. It's you're experiencing an actual release of the emotions. See, the major problem with the mainstream conventional psychoanalysis schools, and I'm talking about the mainstream ones, is that they don't acknowledge, or maybe they acknowledge, but they don't exactly act upon releasing the emotions, right? Psychotherapy tries to work out what happened, what's the trauma here. But you need to release it now, right? I mean, just knowing about something is not enough. Like Bruce Lee says, knowing is not enough, we must apply. So now I know I'm traumatized here. How can I release it? And then you have the catharsis and bioenergetics, as Elliot Holst would describe it. And then you have the Wim Hof breathing / holotropic breathing also, right? Holotropic breathing is a different variation of it. You don't do the holding breath. You just keep breathing like this for a fucking hour. You just keep breathing like that. It's a little bit different than the Wim Hof breathing, but they both accomplish the same thing. I've tried both and they both accomplish the same things. And I've really had accelerated results with releasing a lot of my traumas. Really accelerated results with doing the holotropic breathing method and the Wim Hof breathing method, going deep enough into them. And man, like I've gone on tantrums. Like I've had times after going like deep into the breathing, right? Where I was like rolling on the floor and I was like, like I was just doing absolutely crazy things, like you would see a patient in a mental hospital do or something, you know, because we're all fucking mental. We're all mental patients, you know. Society, the way we grow up, our childhoods, set us all up to be mental patients. And most of the people in the mental institutions are people who are simply showing their symptoms because I guess they're wired a little bit differently. They're actually more in contact with the spirit world. They're more in contact with their inner child. Most of these mental patients, they're just acting upon it with us, whereas for us normal people, we know how to hide it. That's why we're not in mental institutions. But once you actually get to release, you'll become a fucking mental patient yourself. So good luck with releasing your traumas and everything. Understand it takes time. For me personally, it took a lot of fucking time. It took a lot of time and a lot of sessions of the breathing, of the catharsis, for me to be able to be in a good space now, in the present moment. And me continuously providing this content and being in the present and being in the flow, I really think it wouldn't be possible like this without me having released that past, right? So, God bless you all, guys. I love every single one of you. But don't forget to subscribe or you're gonna sleep with the fishes.